The hospital corridor smelled like antiseptic and broken promises. Kevin Young sat in a plastic chair outside the ICU, his hands trembling as he held two tiny hospital bracelets. One pink, one blue. Emma and Ethan, 3 days old. His children, his world. And somewhere behind those double doors, his wife Sarah was slipping away, her heartbeat growing fainter with each passing hour. He'd been 26 years old when he married Sarah, convinced they had all the time in the world. They'd painted the nursery together, soft yellow walls because they wanted to be surprised by the genders. Sarah had laughed as she got paint in her hair, had pressed her palm against the wall and said, "Our handprints will watch over them forever." Kevin had kissed her forehead, tasting the salt of her sweat and the sweetness of her hope. That was 4 months ago, before the complications, before the emergency C-section, before the doctor's voice dropped to that terrible, careful tone that meant everything was about to shatter. "Mr. Young." A nurse approached, her eyes already apologizing. "You can see her now, but you should bring the babies." Kevin's legs barely carried him. He gathered the twins from the nursery, one in each arm, their small bodies warm against his chest. They were perfect. Sarah's nose, his dark hair, 10 fingers and 10 toes between them. He walked into that room and saw his wife for the last time, her face pale as moonlight, her breathing shallow. She opened her eyes when she heard the baby's soft sounds, and something like peace settled over her features. "Kevin," she whispered, "promise me. Promise you'll give them everything." "We'll give them everything," he corrected, his voice breaking. "Together." But Sarah just smiled. That sad, knowing smile that meant she'd already accepted what he couldn't. She touched each baby's face with fingers that shook from exhaustion, traced the curve of their cheeks like she was memorizing them. "Tell them I loved them. Tell them every day." 3 hours later, Sarah was gone, and Kevin Young became a widower and a single father in the same breath. The funeral was a blur of black clothes and casseroles, of people saying, "I'm so sorry," and "Let us know if you need anything." Kevin stood at the graveside with a twin in each arm, watching them lower his wife into the ground, and felt his parents' absence like a second death. They'd called once, his mother's voice tight with disapproval over the phone. "We told you that you were too young to get married. We told you to wait. Now look what's happened. We can't be part of this mess, Kevin. We simply can't." His father had been even more direct. "You made your choices. You'll have to live with the consequences. Don't expect us to clean up after you." They didn't come to the funeral. They didn't send flowers. They erased him like he'd never been their son at all. But someone else came. His younger sister, Rachel, showed up in a worn denim jacket and scuffed boots, her eyes red from crying. She was 23, barely making ends meet as a substitute teacher in a neighboring town, living in a cramped 2-bedroom apartment that smelled like old books and chamomile tea. She wrapped her arms around Kevin and the twins and whispered, "Pack your things. You're coming home with me." "Rachel, I can't ask you to." "You're not asking. I'm telling. You're my brother. These are my niece and nephew. We're family. That's all that matters." Preparing and narrating this type of story took us long efforts and hard work. So if you are enjoying the story, please consider subscribing to our channel. So Kevin moved into Rachel's apartment with 2 newborns, 3 suitcases, and a heart so broken he wasn't sure it would ever beat properly again. The apartment was chaos. Bottles and diapers stacked on every surface, the washing machine running constantly, the sound of crying filling the night like a sad symphony. Rachel worked during the day and came home to cook dinner, to hold a baby while Kevin showered, to sing lullabies in her off-key voice that somehow soothed the twins when nothing else would. "You don't have to do this," Kevin told her one night, watching her fold tiny onesies at 2 in the morning. "Yes, I do," Rachel said simply, "because that's what love looks like. That's what family does." The first year was survival. Kevin learned to function on 3 hours of sleep, to warm bottles one-handed, to tell the difference between Emma's hungry cry and Ethan's tired one. He worked from home as a freelance graphic designer, taking projects late at night when the twins finally slept, his eyes burning from staring at screens in the dark. Money was always tight. Rachel's teaching salary barely covered rent and groceries, and Kevin's irregular income meant they lived paycheck to paycheck, counting every dollar. But there were moments of grace. Emma's first smile, directed at Rachel over breakfast. Ethan's tiny hand gripping Kevin's finger with surprising strength. The way the twins would only settle down when they were lying next to each other, their small bodies instinctively seeking that twin connection. Kevin would watch them sleep and feel Sarah's absence like a physical weight on his chest. But he'd also feel something else. A fierce, protective love that made him understand why people used the word fierce to describe parenthood. Rachel became more than his sister. She became his partner in this strange, exhausting dance of raising children. She taught him how to do Emma's hair, how to make train sounds that made Ethan giggle, how to read the same picture book 15 times without losing his mind. She never complained, never threw his dependence in his face, never once suggested that he was a burden. "Do you ever regret it?" Kevin asked her one Sunday morning, watching her make pancakes while balancing Ethan on her hip. "Giving up your life for us?" Rachel flipped a pancake, not looking at him. "I didn't give up my life. I chose it. There's a difference." The twins started calling her Aunt Ray Ray, which made her cry happy tears. They grew into toddlers. Emma cautious and observant, Ethan bold and reckless. Kevin captured every milestone on his phone, hundreds of photos and videos that he'd never send to his parents because they'd made it clear they didn't want to be grandparents. The rejection still stung, a dull ache that never quite faded. By the time the twins were 3, Kevin had built his design business into something sustainable. He took on bigger clients, saved money, started planning for the future. Rachel got hired as a full-time teacher at a good school, which came with better pay and benefits. They moved into a small house with a backyard, nothing fancy, but it had 3 bedrooms and space for the twins to run. Kevin painted Emma's room lavender and Ethan's room blue, and hung Sarah's handprint from the old nursery on the wall between their rooms. "Mommy's watching over you," he told them every night, and they'd press their small hands against the painted outline and whisper, "Love you, Mommy." The years passed in a rhythm of school pickups and birthday parties, of scraped knees and bedtime stories. Kevin dated occasionally, but never seriously. Partly because he was busy, partly because no one seemed to measure up to Sarah's memory, and partly because he couldn't imagine bringing someone into their carefully balanced family dynamic. The twins were his priority. Rachel was his anchor. That was enough. Emma and Ethan grew into bright, kind children who didn't remember their mother but loved her through Kevin's stories. Emma inherited Sarah's artistic talent, filling notebooks with drawings of dragons and castles. Ethan inherited Kevin's stubborn determination, teaching himself to read before kindergarten because he refused to wait for someone to teach him. They adored their Aunt Rachel, who took them to museums and libraries, who helped with homework and packed creative lunches, who showed up to every school play and soccer game like it was the most important event in the world. Kevin's parents remained absent. No birthday cards, no Christmas calls, nothing. It was like Kevin and his children simply didn't exist to them. Sometimes Kevin would see his mother's Facebook profile, photos of his parents traveling, smiling at beach resorts and mountain lodges, living their retired life without a single grandchild in sight. It hurt, but he'd learned to carry that hurt quietly, to not let it poison the beautiful life he'd built with Rachel and the twins. "Do you think they ever think about us?" Emma asked once when she was 7. She'd come home from school after learning about family trees, confused about why her grandparents weren't on it. Kevin pulled her close. "I don't know, sweetheart, but I know this: the people who love you are the ones who show up. And Aunt Rachel shows up every single day." Everything changed the week before the twins' 10th birthday. Kevin was planning a party, nothing extravagant, just a backyard gathering with their friends, a homemade cake, and a new bike for each of them. He'd saved for months to afford it. Rachel had offered to help, but Kevin had insisted. He wanted to do this himself. Then his phone rang. An unknown number. He almost didn't answer. "Kevin? It's your mother." He nearly dropped the phone. 8 years. 8 years of silence. And now her voice was in his ear, shaky and uncertain. "Mom, your father, he's had a stroke. He's in the hospital." Serious, Kevin. The doctors say. They say we need to prepare. Kevin's grip tightened on the phone. Part of him wanted to hang up, to give her the same silence she'd given him. But he thought of Sarah, of her final moments, of how precious and fleeting life could be. Which hospital? He drove there alone, leaving the twins with Rachel. His mother waited in the ICU waiting room, older and grayer than he remembered, wearing an expensive blouse that looked out of place in the sterile hospital environment. She stood when she saw him, her eyes filling with tears. Kevin, thank you for coming. How is he? Stable for now, but he's paralyzed on his left side. The recovery will be long, if he recovers at all. She twisted her hands together. I know we've been absent, but he's still your father. Kevin felt anger rise in his chest, hot and sharp. Is he? Because for the past 8 years, I haven't had parents. My children haven't had grandparents. Where were you when Emma had pneumonia and we spent 3 nights in the hospital? Where were you when Ethan broke his arm falling off the monkey bars? Where were you for any of it? His mother flinched. We thought we were doing the right thing. We thought tough love would. Tough love. Kevin's voice rose, drawing looks from other families in the waiting room. You abandoned us. You chose your pride over your grandchildren. That's not love. That's cowardice. Please, Kevin, don't do this now. Your father needs. What does he need? What could he possibly need from me? His mother's face crumpled. Forgiveness. A second chance. To meet his grandchildren before it's too late. Kevin stood there, feeling the weight of 8 years pressing down on him. He thought about Emma and Ethan, about how they'd asked about their grandparents and accepted his careful explanations without complaint. He thought about Rachel, who'd given up so much without a second thought. He thought about Sarah, who never got to see her children grow up. I'll think about it, he finally said. But I'm not making any promises. He visited his father the next day. The older man lay in the hospital bed, half his face slack, unable to speak clearly. Kevin's father reached out with his good hand, tears streaming down his face, trying to form words that came out garbled and desperate. Kevin stood at the foot of the bed, arms crossed, feeling nothing but emptiness where forgiveness should be. Over the next 2 weeks, his mother called constantly. She wanted to see the twins. She wanted to be part of their lives. She promised things would be different now, that they'd learned their lesson, that family was what mattered most. Kevin listened to her apologies and justifications and felt torn in two. Rachel was direct when he asked her opinion. They had 8 years to choose you. They chose themselves. Don't let them gaslight you into thinking this is anything but convenient timing. But Emma overheard one of the phone conversations. She looked up at Kevin with her mother's eyes and asked, "Do we have a grandma and grandpa now?" Kevin's heart broke all over again. It's complicated, sweetheart. But they want to meet us? They want to know us? How could he explain that love shouldn't be conditional? That showing up only when it suited you wasn't the same as showing up when you were needed? Emma was 10 years old. She still believed in second chances and happy endings. Maybe, he said carefully, but I need to make sure it's safe for you first. His mother invited them to Sunday dinner. Kevin agreed, but only if Rachel came too. They drove to his childhood home, a large colonial house in an affluent suburb, with a manicured lawn and expensive cars in the driveway. The contrast to their modest house was stark. Emma and Ethan were nervous, holding Kevin's hands as they walked to the front door. His mother answered, her smile too bright, her eyes scanning the twins hungrily. Oh, Kevin, they're beautiful. They look just like Sarah. Something in Kevin's chest tightened at the mention of his wife's name. His mother had never even met Sarah, had refused to come to their wedding. Dinner was awkward. His parents, his father now in a wheelchair, struggling to eat, asked questions about the twins' interests, their school, their hobbies. Emma answered politely, her artist's eyes taking in every detail of the fancy house. Ethan was quiet, protective, sitting close to Kevin. Rachel watched everything with guarded eyes, her hand never far from her phone. Kevin's mother kept glancing at Rachel, her expression difficult to read. Finally, she said, We're so grateful you've been there for Kevin and the children. Of course, now that we're back in their lives, you won't have to shoulder that burden anymore." The room went silent. Rachel's fork stopped halfway to her mouth. "Burden." Kevin's voice was dangerously quiet. His mother seemed oblivious to the tension. "We just mean that family should take care of family. We're their grandparents. We can provide things that perhaps Rachel couldn't. Better schools, activities, opportunities." "Stop." Kevin stood, his chair scraping against the hardwood floor. "Rachel isn't a burden. She's the reason my children know what unconditional love looks like. She's the reason they have stability and security and a home. She's more family than you've ever been." His father tried to speak, his words slurred but urgent. Kevin's mother translated. "He's saying we want to help. We want to make up for lost time." "You can't." Kevin gathered the twins. "You can't buy back 8 years with Sunday dinners and promises. Emma, Ethan, say goodbye to your grandparents." The twins did, confused but obedient. As they reached the door, Kevin's mother called out, "Kevin, please, we're trying. Doesn't that count for something?" He turned back, seeing his parents clearly for the first time. Two people who'd loved their comfort and pride more than their own son, who were reaching out now not out of love but out of fear of dying alone and forgotten. "It might," Kevin said quietly, "but it's going to take a lot more than trying. It's going to take proving you've actually changed." The weeks that followed were a careful dance. Kevin's parents wanted more. More visits, more time with the twins, more involvement. Kevin granted them supervised visits, always with Rachel present, always in neutral locations like parks or restaurants. He watched his parents try to connect with Emma and Ethan through expensive gifts and grand gestures. But the twins remained politely distant, sensing the insincerity beneath the surface. Emma told Kevin one night, as he tucked her in, "Grandma and Grandpa are nice, but they don't feel like family, not like Aunt Rachel does." Kevin kissed her forehead. "That's because Rachel earned that feeling. And maybe Grandma and Grandpa will too eventually. But it takes time." His mother struggled to understand. During one visit, she pulled Kevin aside and said, "Why don't the children warm up to us? We're trying so hard." "Because love isn't transactional, Mom. You can't just decide to be grandparents when it's convenient and expect them to fall into your arms. They're smart kids. They know you weren't there when it mattered. We made a mistake." His mother's voice cracked. "Can't you forgive us?" "I'm working on it. But forgiveness isn't the same as trust. And trust has to be earned." The turning point came 3 months after that first dinner. Kevin's father had been doing physical therapy, regaining some mobility and speech. One afternoon, during a visit to the park, Ethan climbed too high on the jungle gym and fell, hitting his head on the metal bar. Kevin was across the playground with Emma. Rachel was getting ice cream from a nearby truck. Kevin's father, in his wheelchair, was closest. He called out, his voice still slurred but loud enough, and caught Ethan's attention just before the boy could panic and move in a way that might cause more injury. Kevin's mother rushed over, her hands gentle as she checked Ethan's head. Her medical knowledge from her nursing background decades ago coming back. They kept him calm until Kevin arrived. Ethan had a minor concussion, scary but not serious. At the emergency room, Kevin's parents stayed. His mother held Emma while Kevin sat with Ethan through the CT scan. His father waited in the lobby, his good hand clutching his wheelchair armrest, his face drawn with worry that seemed genuine. When the doctors cleared Ethan, and Kevin came out with his son in his arms, his father struggled to stand from his wheelchair. Kevin's mother helped him up. With trembling effort, Kevin's father hugged both Kevin and Ethan, tears streaming down his face. Sorry, he managed to say, the word thick but clear. So sorry." Kevin felt something break open in his chest. Not forgiveness, not yet, but the beginning of something like it. That night, Rachel made hot chocolate for everyone in Kevin's kitchen, including Kevin's parents, who'd driven home with them. The twins were asleep upstairs. Ethan checked on every hour as a precaution. Kevin's mother sat at the kitchen table, her expensive jewelry looking out of place among the mismatched chairs and crayon drawings on the fridge. "Thank you," Kevin's mother said to Rachel, "for everything you've done for them, for being there when we weren't." Rachel studied her for a long moment. "I didn't do it for thanks. I did it because they're my family." "I know, and I was wrong calling you a burden. You're what I should have been, what we should have been." Kevin's mother's voice broke. "I don't know if we can ever make up for what we've lost, but I want to try, not to replace you, but to finally be the grandparents they deserve. Kevin will let us." Kevin looked at his parents, really looked at them. His father, diminished by illness but present in a way he'd never been before. His mother, without the armor of pride, just a woman who'd made terrible choices and was trying to unmake them. They weren't the same people who'd abandoned him 8 years ago. Suffering had changed them. Loss had humbled them. "Here's what I need from you," Kevin said slowly. "I need you to understand that Rachel isn't going anywhere. She's not a placeholder. She's their aunt, their guardian, their family. If you come into their lives, it's as an addition, not a replacement." "Of course," his mother said quickly. "Of course. And I need you to understand that you don't get to call the shots. You don't get to undermine my parenting or criticize my choices. You gave up that right when you walked away." His father nodded, his good hand reaching across the table toward Kevin's. Kevin took it, feeling the tremor in his father's grip, the weakness that came from a body that had betrayed him. "And most importantly," Kevin continued, his voice thick with emotion, "I need you to love them unconditionally, not when it's easy, not when it makes you look good. Always, through everything, the way Rachel has, the way Sarah would have. Can you do that?" "Yes," his mother whispered. "Yes, we can. We will." The reconciliation wasn't instant or perfect. It was messy, full of missteps and difficult conversations. Kevin's mother said the wrong thing sometimes, falling back into old patterns of judgment. Kevin's father struggled with his health, some days unable to participate in activities with the twins. But they kept showing up. Week after week, they came to Emma's art shows and Ethan's soccer games. They learned to respect Kevin's boundaries and Rachel's role in the family. The twins gradually warmed to them. Emma started calling them Grandma and Grandpa without prompting. Ethan asked them to come to his school's Grandparents' Day. Small victories that meant everything. Rachel watched it all with cautious optimism. One evening, as she and Kevin cleaned up after a family dinner that had included his parents, she said, "I think they're really trying." "They are," Kevin agreed. "But I'll never forget who was there when it mattered most." Rachel smiled, bumping his shoulder with hers. "Neither will I, and neither will the twins." For the twins' 11th birthday, Kevin's parents asked if they could contribute to the party. Kevin agreed, with the condition that it remained modest. No over-the-top displays of wealth that might make Emma and Ethan uncomfortable or entitled. His parents agreed. They brought a beautiful cake and age-appropriate gifts, art supplies for Emma, books for Ethan, and they stayed to help clean up afterward, his father washing dishes one-handed while his mother dried. It was during the cleanup that Kevin's mother pulled him aside. "I want to do something, Kevin. For Rachel." "What do you mean?" "She gave up so much for you and the children. I want to set up a fund, for her retirement or a house or whatever she needs. It's the least we can do." Kevin was stunned. That's generous, Mom. But you should talk to Rachel about it." "Not me." His mother did. Rachel was uncomfortable at first, insisting she hadn't done it for money or recognition. But Kevin's mother was persistent. "Please, let me do this. Let me honor what you did when we were too stubborn to do the right thing." Eventually, Rachel accepted, a trust fund that would give her financial security she'd never had. She cried when the papers were signed, not from gratitude, but from the validation that her sacrifices had meant something, had been seen. Time moved forward. Kevin's father continued physical therapy, regaining enough mobility to walk short distances with a cane. His mother volunteered at the twin school, becoming known as the grandmother who always had kind words and homemade cookies. Kevin's design business thrived, allowing him to provide more stability for his family. Rachel met someone, a kind, patient man named Marcus who loved that she came with a built-in extended family. The twins grew into teenagers, Emma with her art portfolio growing more impressive each year, Ethan with his love of science and mathematics. They knew their story, knew how their father had struggled, how their aunt had saved them, how their grandparents had come back. They understood that family was complicated, that love could be lost and found again, that forgiveness was a journey, not a destination. On the twins' 13th birthday, Kevin took them to Sarah's grave. They'd gone every year, but this year felt different. Emma placed a drawing she'd made, a family portrait that included Sarah, Kevin, Rachel, and yes, their grandparents. Ethan read a poem he'd written about love and loss and second chances. "Mom would be proud of you," Kevin told them, his voice steady despite the tears in his eyes. "And she'd be grateful for Aunt Rachel, who made sure you grew up knowing what real love looks like." Emma leaned against him. "Do you think she can see us? All of us together?" Kevin looked at the grave, at the handprint he'd carved into Sarah's headstone, the same handprint from the nursery wall. "I think she knows. And I think she's happy we didn't give up on love, even when it hurt." 5 years later, Emma graduated from high school with a full scholarship to art school. Her portfolio was stunning. Pieces that explored family, loss, resilience, and love. At her graduation party, she unveiled a piece she'd been working on in secret. A large canvas showing hands reaching toward each other across a chasm, finally touching. She titled it "The Bridge." "This is for all of you," she said, looking at Kevin, Rachel, and her grandparents, "for showing me that broken things can be mended, that it takes courage and time and patience, but it's possible." Ethan, now a high school senior with plans to study engineering, added, "And for teaching us that family isn't just about blood, it's about who shows up." Rachel, now married to Marcus and expecting her first child, wiped tears from her eyes. "I'm so proud of both of you." Kevin's mother approached Rachel, something she'd done often in recent years. "Thank you," she said simply, "for everything, for being better than we were." Rachel embraced her. "We all did our best in the end. That's what matters." Kevin watched his family, complicated, imperfect, beautiful, gathered in his backyard. His parents, now in their 70s, sitting side by side and watching their grandchildren with obvious pride. Rachel, glowing with pregnancy, laughing with Marcus about baby names. Emma and Ethan, confident and kind, surrounded by friends who loved them. He thought about Sarah, about how she'd asked him to give their children everything. He hadn't been able to do it alone, but with Rachel's help, with time and forgiveness and hard work, he'd done something even better. He'd given them a family that showed them what real love looked like. Not perfect love, not easy love, but the kind of love that endures, that bends but doesn't break, that finds its way back even after being lost. That night, after everyone had gone home, Kevin sat on his porch with a cup of coffee. His phone buzzed, a text from his mother. "Thank you for giving us another chance. We won't waste it." He smiled, typing back, "I know you won't. See you next Sunday." And then, because some promises should never be broken, he went upstairs to where the twins were getting ready for bed. He kissed them both goodnight, touched the handprint on the wall between their rooms, and whispered what he'd whispered every night for 13 years. "Mommy's watching over you, and she's so proud." Emma and Ethan pressed their hands against Sarah's handprint, now a ritual as comfortable as breathing. "Love you, Mommy," they said in unison. "Love you, Dad," Emma added. "Love you too," Ethan echoed. Kevin turned off their lights, leaving the door slightly cracked. He walked back downstairs, past the photos on the wall. Images that told a story of survival, struggle, reconciliation, and triumph. A story that wasn't perfect, but was theirs. And in the quiet of his house, surrounded by the evidence of a life well lived and a family hard won, Kevin Young finally felt something he hadn't felt in 13 years. Peace. Because he'd kept his promise to Sarah. He'd given their children everything. Not money or material things, but something far more valuable. The knowledge that they were loved, deeply and unconditionally, by people who chose them every single day. And that was everything that mattered. Preparing and narrating this type of story took us long efforts and hard work. So if you are enjoying the story, please consider subscribing to our channel.